Hello, we are live in Las Vegas at Mobile World Congress, the Las Vegas edition, and we're at the Boingo Innovation Center. My name's Phil Harvey. This is Mike Dano.
That's me.
And we are wrapping it up. We've been here a couple of days, and we've seen some things, and we've talked to some people, and now we have some notes and some highlights, maybe things we haven't covered yet, or things we want to kind of put into context for you all watching and listening. Let's see. I guess I could start. I know we want to talk about OpenRAN.
We definitely want to talk about OpenRAN.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
I think some of the kind of highlights coming from the program, the National Spectrum Coalition
Sounds right.
Consortium,
Sure.
NSC,
Okay. Yes.
put on a good event, and had some speakers from the White House, some speakers from government and industry, and they were talking, one of the kind of key themes there was, that spectrum sharing is like critical, like we have to figure out a way to do it.
It's a big topic here at the show, right? Like
Yeah.
they talked about it during the keynotes, and like
Yeah.
that's a huge thing.
And CBRS kind of, I guess, paved the way for dynamic spectrum sharing. So we've got a bit of a blueprint, but we need to, I guess, level it up and get the government to agree on some modality for this to happen. Otherwise, we're going to be at an impasse, and this is a precious resource. So they need to wring every drop, as they were saying, they need to wring every bit of it out that they can.
Yeah.
Get as much use of it as they can. That was interesting. It was interesting to hear those folks kind of opine on that. Also at the event and doing interviews was the CTO from Kyivstar in Ukraine. He spoke on the security portion of the program, and really his whole discussion was about resilience. Just not just building a network resiliently, but kind of in the fog of war, kind of continually repairing assets, network assets that keep getting attacked and blown up on the front line, and then being able to secure a network. And I think they said they kept, they've been able to keep 94%, network uptime and resiliency, even though they're constantly under DDoS attacks.
That's so nuts, like to be in that kind of a situation, in a wartime footing,
Yeah.
and to continue to operate a network is like quite astounding, and hopefully a situation that U.S. carriers never face.
Right.
But like, hopefully they're learning their lessons too, just in case.
Well, that's the thing, is he does have, lessons to impart to those carriers, and I'm sure he had meetings and, told them about some, new techniques in DDoS and things like that. But I think in terms of the story itself, what I took away from it was, it was interesting that he was both still so hopeful about not just seeing an end to the war quickly, but his ambition for where the company and its network could go. The population of Ukraine has suddenly become a lot more mobile than they had been pre-war, and so the network is having to adapt to that. And so he talked about the different technical things they were doing to kind of help accommodate that. I found it to be a really inspiring, engagement. It was interesting too, because he, in private conversations, he detailed his journey just getting here was enormous. Car rides, long waits in customs, things like that. And so I
Sneaking across the border in a man in a disguise, with
Yeah,
nose and glasses, and
not
maybe
not too far off from that,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it made me appreciate how relatively easy we have it, even though it does seem like our in telecom and business, our jobs can be difficult. Trust me, you have no idea.
Right. Yeah, exactly. A little bit of reality
Yeah.
in our little bubble of covering the trade
Yeah,
show.
exactly. Yeah. So I guess let's talk about OpenRAN, because that is another topic that came up in multiple ways in multiple speeches.
And before we go to OpenRAN, though,
Yeah.
I think that the discussion of operating a network in wartime is interesting, and partly because we actually had an official from the U.S. Department of Defense come, and he gave a keynote. He spoke at the NSC event as well, and he talked about how is the U.S. military going to use 5G in wartime situations, either domestically or internationally, and how what his goal was is to have U.S. soldiers connect to whatever 5G is available, to bring 5G with them, and literally in backpacks and base stations supplied by companies like Lockheed Martin. Like, there's a lot. I think that it's interesting that there's a lot of discussion around how 5G could be used in war situations by, they call them war fighters.
Yeah, and then
it's very interesting. It's a new dimension to the show that I honestly haven't heard a whole lot about, and now I'm hearing a ton about.
Yeah, it's definitely on top of mind, and the other part, the flip side of that too, is the security aspect of it, of being able to, how do we secure these devices that kind of come from the commercial world into, you know, a zone where any radio signal at all gives you away, you know, and so how do you...
So you don't want to register with the network necessarily as you would do when the plane lands and you're on your phone again. Not a great situation for a soldier.
Yeah, that was an interesting, you know, point to sort of say, like, stop announcing that you're here, you know, and that kind of thing. And then also the idea of using radio spectrum as like detection, you know,
for sensing.
And kind of not just, you know, so not just you know, hiding from your enemies, but also figuring out where they are, where their assets are in the field. It is an you know, it doesn't come up in business much, but it is an interesting kind of, I guess, market and also evolution of the technology. It makes me wonder, you know, what they'll discover about this that might be able to come back to the commercial.
Right. And one of the things that what I thought was really interesting, one of my personal takeaways, was that the guy from the DoD talked about using 5G for smart logistics. They put it in a warehouse. They're able to track all the things in the warehouse, so it's logistics. And he said they were able to track, you know, almost 100% of all the things in that warehouse. And I thought, how interesting, because my dad served in the Air Force. In Arizona as a logistics technician for the Air Force, tracking things in a warehouse. That was his job while he served in the Air Force. And so here we are, you know, 30, 40 years later, talking about the same thing that he was working on, but we've got a real different way of doing it nowadays. And I don't know.
Problem. I hope they name a router after him someday or something like that.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be sweet. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry we didn't have time to talk about OpenRAN.
No. But anyway, wait.
Okay.
There's tons of stuff about OpenRAN.
Okay.
Wait. Yeah, I actually got a lot of stuff about OpenRAN out of this show. And it was a surprisingly, there was a surprising amount of sort of news and commentary on that topic. I mean, I know we talk about OpenRAN all the time, but like there were some actual developments in the industry.
By we, you mean Ian Morris.
And rightfully so. I mean, if you need to follow OpenRAN, I just read what Ian writes, and then I go along my merry way, happy to ignore the rest of it. But yeah, and he actually wrote about it. I mean, the big announcement this week was the Ericsson announcement.
Sure.
So Ericsson said they would support essentially their version of OpenRAN. So they've got a specific proposal that they like, a specific design that they want to use for open front haul. And I spoke with Ericsson, and they said, yeah, you know, we're going to support that one, but if operators want to turn off some of the functions, they can. They have some flexibility. But I had a separate conversation with Alok Shah, who runs Samsung Networks here in the U.S., and he really said that whole project by Ericsson is a step on the road to fragmentation. That now they've got these different versions of OpenRAN that they might want to support, and Samsung is sort of evaluating the Ericsson proposal. Will they support it? We don't know. We'll see what our customers say. But he specifically talked about the prospect of fragmentation in because of this new proposal from Ericsson. He mentioned another one from Qualcomm, and so we're seeing that market develop, which is really interesting. Parallel Wireless had a booth here at the show. They've been a long time OpenRAN proponent. They've sort of have gone through some issues, but having a booth at the show is probably a good sign for them. So we're seeing momentum. Some of Verizon's top executives are talking about OpenRAN, but really saying that it's not ready for scale. They're still testing it, and they don't see it as a scale play yet. So they're still on the fence about that. But even just talking about the NSC event, and we got to hear from a lot of government officials what their views on it are, and all of them, to a person, said, we want to support OpenRAN. We think that this is important from a U.S. perspective. We want to support this process. They've got the NTIA is working on doling out $1.5 billion from their Public Innovation Fund, and so heard about that. They're going to do their next round probably later next summer. So that OpenRAN thing, there's something there, but it's unclear exactly what it is and how it's going to evolve. But that's still a topic here.
That's the tough part. It's like you can't really crystallize around what a commercial opportunity is, because we still don't know to what scale it could ever, what's the peak scale it could ever be used. And the reason we don't know that is because in the trenches, even though we have broad agreement on some interfaces and some openness, there's always going to be equipment vendors wanting to do things their way and specific, things so they can protect their fiefdom or avoid working with this company over here and that sort of thing. So the commercial interests are always going to get in the way of building better, building optimal networks. But can we still build better networks? What we might have to do is just have OpenRAN as a federal contractor thing, real OpenRAN, and then everybody else have whatever version.
However they want to implement it, which is, on the one hand, that might be a good way of handling it. It gives operators a lot of opportunities and a lot of flexibility and stuff. But on the other hand, you do see, I think the threat of fragmentation is definitely a real one as we start to see start to see vendors, embrace some of these designs and not others, and it just creates a lot of sort of chaos. And I mean, that's good for us. It's more copy. We get to read more of Ian's stories.
I mean,
which I don't mind at all.
No. I do wonder at what point even he'll get tired of the back and forth, and sort of the promises, and then the promises made, and then the kind of the disappointment or the change in strategy. But you're right. Now that a big network equipment vendor with that can move markets has pushed in a single direction, it does at least cause everybody to react. So I think we'll have, maybe this time next year we'll have maybe even more progress on it. Hopefully,
we'll find out. We'll find out next year in sweaty Las Vegas,
that's
2024.
Right. In sweaty Las Vegas, 2024. I think that's a great time for us to sign off. It's not hot enough here yet, so I'm going to go climb to the top of the sphere over there and work on my tan. Thank you all for tuning in.